I never thought I'd be writing this, but what happened to me on January 7th, 2024 changed my life forever. My name is Matthew Carter, and I live in Washington. I was just an ordinary man, a husband, a father, and a hard worker. I never expected to die that day, but I did. For 11 minutes and 46 seconds, I was clinically dead, yet I was more alive than ever. What I saw beyond this world left me shaken. Jesus showed me things about the future, especially March 2025, that I can't keep to myself. You need to hear this. It was a cold winter evening in Washington, and I had just finished a long day at work. My job wasn't anything special, just a regular 9-to-5 office position. But that day, I remember feeling more exhausted than usual. The rain had started falling in the afternoon, and by the time I got into my car, the roads were slick. I called my wife, Rachel, before leaving. She asked me to pick up some milk on the way home. I told her I'd stop at the corner store near our house. Just another ordinary day. I didn't know it would be the last conversation I'd have with her before I died. Driving through Interstate 5, I kept the radio on, flipping through stations. The rain was hitting hard now, and the wipers struggled to keep up. I wasn't speeding, just going 35 miles per hour, but visibility was low. Then it happened. Out of nowhere, a set of headlights blinded me. A truck was swerving out of control, coming straight for me. I had no time to react, no time to think. My body tensed, and everything went black. The next thing I knew, I was floating. At first I felt nothing. No pain, no cold, no sense of my body at all. I was just there, floating. My mind felt strangely clear, but something was missing. I couldn't feel the weight of my body anymore. Looking down, I saw the crash site. My Honda Civic was wrecked, steam rising from the crushed hood. The truck driver had jumped out, pacing in shock. The paramedics arrived, pulling my body from the wreck. It was unsettling to watch them work on me, trying to restart my heart. I should have been terrified, but I wasn't. Instead, I felt a deep peace, unlike anything I'd ever known. The noise of the sirens and the shouts of the rescue team felt distant, like I was watching a movie on mute. Then I felt something behind me, a pulling force. I turned, and there it was, a tunnel, not a dark, endless hole, but a passage of golden light, alive and moving, like it had a mind of its own. The moment I saw it, I knew it wasn't something natural. This was a gateway to something beyond human comprehension, and it was calling me forward. The moment I moved toward the tunnel, everything around me faded. The sound of the paramedics disappeared. The wreckage, the rain, even the city of Washington, all of it vanished. The tunnel became the only thing that existed. It wasn't just light, it was alive. It pulsed, radiated warmth, and wrapped around me like a loving embrace. I felt a pull, like a magnet drawing me in. And then I saw a figure standing at the other end. I couldn't make out the face at first. The light around him was too bright. But I knew who it was. My soul recognized him before my mind did. Jesus. The moment I realized it, my entire being trembled. Not out of fear, but from an overwhelming sense of awe and love. He wasn't just a figure. He was everything. He was love, truth, power, all at once. His voice echoed, but not in a normal way. It wasn't sound. It was inside me, speaking straight to my soul. Matthew. The way he said my name, like he had known me my entire life, like he had waited for me. Before I could even process where I was, Jesus reached out his hand. The moment he touched me, everything around me changed. The tunnel disappeared, and suddenly I was standing on what looked like a city street. But this wasn't Washington. It looked similar, yet different. The buildings were sleek, modern, but something felt off. People were walking around, going about their day, but their expressions were strange. They moved like machines, focused, disconnected from each other. "Watch closely," Jesus said. His voice was gentle but serious. I looked around. A woman walked into a coffee shop, but instead of using cash or a card, she waved her hand over a scanner. A small light flashed under her skin. It looked harmless, convenient, normal. But then Jesus said something that chilled me to my core. This is what comes before the deception. I didn't understand at first. It just looked like advanced technology. But then the scene shifted, and I saw people willingly accepting this new system. At first it was just for payments, then for identification, then for everything. Jesus turned to me, his eyes filled with sorrow. This is how it begins. I felt a deep unease as I watched. I wanted to shout, to warn the people, but they couldn't hear me. Then Jesus showed me something even worse. March 2025, and what I saw next made my blood run cold. As I stood next to Jesus, the scene before me changed. The city disappeared, and suddenly I was standing in what looked like a massive conference room. There were screens everywhere showing world leaders, scientists, and public figures. They were making an announcement. The date on the screen read March 2025. A man stepped forward. I couldn't recognize his face, but he had a presence, a kind of confidence that made people trust him. He smiled as he spoke. "We have found the ultimate solution for security, health, and prosperity. This is the future." On the screen behind him, I saw images of a new system, a small, implanted device. It looked like a tiny glowing mark just beneath the skin. At first it seemed harmless. It promised convenience, safety, and economic stability. But I knew something was wrong. Jesus placed his hand on my shoulder. "This is the moment of deception," he said. "They will not see it for what it truly is." The announcement was met with applause. The world embraced it eagerly. But then Jesus showed me more. Suddenly, I saw people lining up to receive this mark. There was no force, no threats, just desperation. Those without it couldn't buy food, couldn't access their bank accounts, couldn't even get medical care. I saw a man trying to resist, trying to hold on to his faith. His wife and children were starving. His employer refused to let him work without it. I saw the moment he gave in, and as he received the mark, I saw something dark enter his soul. It wasn't dramatic. No screaming, no possession. But something changed. Jesus turned to me, his expression grieved. They will not even realize what they have lost. The next thing I saw was how it all started. The deception didn't come suddenly. It came gradually, step by step, so slowly that people didn't even notice. It began with small conveniences, devices implanted for easy payments, smart systems that made life simpler. Then it became necessary for work, then travel, then healthcare. Churches even started using it. I saw pastors telling their congregations, "This isn't the mark of the beast, it's just technology. God understands." And people believed them. Jesus shook his head. "Even my people will be deceived." I saw how social pressure was used. Those who refused were mocked, labeled as conspiracy theorists, extremists, or outdated. Some churches remained faithful, warning their people, but many compromised. They didn't see the danger because it wasn't forced upon them. It was welcomed. Jesus looked at me, his eyes filled with sorrow. The greatest deception is one that doesn't look like a deception at all. Then I saw something that made my blood run cold. A great event happened, a world crisis. There were massive natural disasters, economic collapses, and violent conflicts. People were terrified. Then a leader emerged. He promised peace, stability, and unity. He didn't appear as a dictator or tyrant. He was charismatic, well-spoken, and logical, and he had answers. Under his leadership, a new global system was introduced. It was framed as a way to prevent war, hunger, and financial instability. I saw how people welcomed him. They called him a genius, a peacemaker. Nations submitted willingly. But Jesus spoke with urgency. This is how control begins. He will not come with force. He will come with solutions. At first it seemed harmless, but then the rules changed. People who resisted the system started disappearing. Some were arrested for spreading misinformation. Others lost their homes, their bank accounts frozen overnight. Churches that refused to comply were shut down, and those who resisted the system were labeled as threats to progress. The world was embracing false peace, and Jesus whispered, "This is the trap." Then Jesus showed me something even deeper, what was happening in the spiritual realm behind all of this. I saw waves of darkness sweeping over cities, but no one noticed. People walked around like nothing was wrong, but spiritually they were changing. The technology itself wasn't just physical, it was affecting their minds and souls. I saw people's prayers becoming weaker. I saw pastors losing their fire. Worship services became empty performances instead of encounters with God. And the worst part, they didn't even realize it was happening. Jesus pointed at a family sitting in their home. They had the new system installed. Their lives were perfect. No sickness, no financial struggles. But I could see what they couldn't. Their spirits were dim, their hearts hardened. They still talked about God. They still went to church, but they had no connection to Him anymore. Jesus turned to me. The enemy does not need to take away their faith. He only needs to weaken it little by little until they no longer hear my voice. I saw how the enemy's plan was never to make people choose evil outright. It was to make them so comfortable, so numb, that they no longer needed God at all. And that's when I realized the truth. This wasn't just a war for control. This was a war for souls. The next vision Jesus showed me was more personal, more painful. I saw families, husbands, wives, children, being torn apart, not by war or disease, but by something more insidious, deception and division. It started small. I saw a father sitting at the dinner table, scrolling through his digital interface embedded in his wrist. His children were excitedly showing him something, but he barely noticed. His mind was somewhere else, plugged in, constantly connected. His wife sat across from him, visibly worried. "Don't you see what's happening? We're losing ourselves." But he laughed it off. "Come on, it's just technology. It makes life easier. Why are you always so paranoid?" Jesus turned to me and said, "This will be the enemy's greatest weapon, convincing people that their chains are actually freedom." Then I saw a mother begging her teenage son. He had just received his first digital upgrade, and she could already sense something was different. His responses were shallow, distant, robotic. He wasn't the same boy who once prayed with her at bedtime. "Please don't go further with this. You don't need it," he sighed, rolling his eyes. "Mom, this is the future. Everyone is doing it. You're the one stuck in the past." She tried to hold him, but he pulled away. The vision changed. I saw churches dividing. Half of the congregation accepted the new system, calling it progress. The other half resisted, warning that it would lead to spiritual blindness. But those who resisted were mocked, alienated, even labeled as troublemakers. I saw people reporting their own family members, turning them in for refusing to comply. I saw a woman sobbing as her husband walked out the door. "I can't stay with you if you won't get it," he said. Her eyes were full of pain, but she whispered back, "I'd rather lose you than lose my soul." Jesus spoke again, this time with sadness in his voice. "Many will have to make this choice, and many will choose wrongly." Then Jesus showed me something that made my blood run cold. The mark was never what people expected. There was no force, no violence at first. People weren't dragged into it, they walked willingly. At first, it was just a tool. It started as a way to replace passwords, improve security, track health. But slowly, it became something more. I saw a man trying to buy groceries. He reached for his wallet, but the cashier shook her head. "We don't take that anymore. You need to upgrade." He looked around. Everyone else waved their hands over the scanner, their digital marks glowing faintly. They were smiling, chatting, completely unaware of what they had lost. But when he refused, the atmosphere changed. The smiles turned cold. People stared at him like he was an outsider, an intruder in their perfect world. I saw others losing their homes, their jobs, their ability to exist in society. Not because they had done anything wrong, but because they had chosen not to comply. Jesus looked at me with deep sorrow. This will be how the enemy works, not by force, but by exclusion. Then I saw something even worse. The mark was not just physical, it was spiritual. I saw people who had taken it trying to pray. They still went to church, still called on God, but their prayers felt empty. Their worship was hollow. It was like there was a veil over their eyes, blocking them from truly reaching him. Jesus whispered, "They will not even know what they've lost." Then the vision shifted. I saw a small group of people. They were different. They didn't have the mark. They didn't belong to the system. They were hiding, gathering in secret, praying. Their numbers were few, but their faith was like fire. I saw a young girl, no older than 10, praying with more power than I had ever seen. She didn't have access to the digital world, but she had something stronger, the Holy Spirit. Jesus pointed at them and said, "These are my true followers." They had no earthly security, no homes, no jobs. Some were living in the wilderness, moving from place to place. But they had peace, a kind of peace that made no sense in the face of what they had lost. Then I saw miracles. I saw a man lift his hands in prayer, and food appeared before him. I saw a woman with a sick child, unable to see a doctor, but when she laid hands on him, he was healed instantly. They were cut off from the world, but they were connected to something greater. Jesus turned to me. "The world will call them weak, but in my kingdom they are the strongest." Then Jesus showed me something even more incredible. The world had turned against them. Laws were made against them. They couldn't buy, sell, or even move freely, but something strange was happening. They were untouched. I saw a group of believers surrounded by armed men. They had been found, reported, tracked down. The soldiers aimed their weapons, but nothing happened. Their guns jammed. The soldiers looked at each other, confused. Then they turned and ran. Angels stood among the believers. I saw a man walking through a city, completely invisible to the cameras scanning for unmarked individuals. The system simply couldn't see him. Jesus said, "I will protect my own in ways the world cannot understand." Then I saw food multiplying. People had only a little, yet it never ran out. They were sustained. I saw a storm coming, a disaster striking a city. But where the faithful lived, the storm stopped, as if an invisible shield had been placed around them. Then Jesus said something that shook me to my core. "The enemy will come with power, but my power is greater. Tell them not to be afraid." Jesus turned to me, his expression both solemn and urgent. "Tell them to prepare now. before the choice is taken from them, he said. I saw people scrambling in the final moments, trying to resist when it was already too late. They had ignored the warnings, believing they had more time. But when the moment of decision came, they weren't ready. Fear overtook them, and they gave in. I saw Christians who had once been strong in their faith slowly compromised, step by step, until they could no longer recognize truth from lies. The deception had come so gradually that they didn't even realize they had drifted away. Jesus then showed me a different group, those who had prepared long before the world changed. These people weren't just physically prepared, they were spiritually anchored. They had built their faith so strong, so unshakable, that when the moment came, they stood firm. Tell them to strengthen their relationship with me now, Jesus said. They must know my voice so well that nothing can deceive them. I saw these people reading their Bibles daily, not just as a habit, but as if it was their lifeline. They didn't just go to church, they lived in prayer, constantly seeking God's wisdom. They taught their children to love Jesus more than they loved the world. I saw families making hard decisions early, rejecting certain conveniences, detaching themselves from the system while they still had time. Others were forming small communities, supporting one another, because they knew they would need each other when the world turned against them. Jesus then spoke words that chilled me to the core. Many will wait until it's too late. They will beg me to help them, but they will have already chosen their master. I felt an urgency like never before. I knew that we had little time left to prepare. Jesus looked at me, and for the first time I saw a deep sorrow in his eyes. Not because he was powerless, but because he knew that many would not listen. I have given them everything, he said. I have warned them through my word, through my prophets, through my spirit, but many still refuse to see. Then he placed his hand on my shoulder and spoke the words I will never forget. The days ahead will be the hardest mankind has ever seen, but my people do not need to be afraid. I will be with them, guiding them, protecting them, but they must choose now whom they will serve. I saw his deep love for every soul, even for those who would reject him. There was no anger in his voice, only heartache for the lost. Then he said one final thing. Tell them not to fear. The enemy may control the world, but he does not control eternity. Those who remain faithful to me will reign with me in the kingdom that is coming. And then, just like that, he was gone. The next thing I knew, I was gasping for air. The hospital room was spinning. The sound of monitors beeping filled my ears. I had returned. A nurse rushed over. "You were dead for almost 12 minutes, she said, shaking her head. "It's a miracle you're back." But I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking about what I had just seen. I looked at my hands, my body, my surroundings. It felt unreal. I had been there, with Jesus, and now I was back in this fragile, broken world. For days I struggled. How could I share this? Who would believe me? I tried telling a close friend, but he laughed it off. He said it was probably just my brain creating hallucinations from lack of oxygen. Even my own wife hesitated. She saw my conviction, but she didn't know what to do with what I was saying. That's when I remembered Jesus' words. Do not worry about who will listen. Your task is to share. So I'm sharing this now with you. Not because I want attention, not because I need you to believe me, but because Jesus told me to. March 2025 is approaching. The world is changing exactly as he showed me. If you're reading this, don't wait until it's too late. Prepare your heart, strengthen your faith, teach your children, stay close to Jesus, because the deception is coming, and most people won't even see it. Jesus had shown me how the world would change, but what struck me the most was how quietly, how subtly it would all happen. The enemy wouldn't force his way in. He wouldn't announce his arrival with fear or destruction. Instead, he would make his way into people's hearts through comfort, convenience, and slow compromise. I saw people embracing the changes without question. At first it was small, things that seemed useful, beneficial even. New technologies, upgrades to everyday life, artificial intelligence to help make better decisions. It was all marketed as a way to improve lives, reduce stress, and eliminate struggles. I saw churches incorporating these technologies. Pastors were using them to track attendance, organize worship, even enhance Bible study with customized spiritual guidance. They didn't see the slow shift. Then, I saw how it started controlling emotions. There was a young man, barely in his 20s. He had once been passionate about Christ, but after receiving the upgrade, his passion dimmed. His prayers became less frequent. His hunger for God's word faded. Not because he stopped believing, but because he no longer felt the urgency. I saw a woman who struggled with anxiety. The new system regulated her emotions, keeping her at a steady, neutral state. But it did something else too. It quieted her conscience. She no longer felt conviction over sin. She stopped repenting. Jesus turned to me and said, "This is how the enemy works, not by taking away their faith, but by making them too comfortable to need me." I wept when I saw people losing their spiritual discernment without realizing it. They still went to church, they still prayed, but their connection to God was fading bit by bit, until one day they simply didn't care anymore. And then, when the final step came, the one that required full allegiance to the system, they wouldn't even resist. Then Jesus showed me something that sent chills down my spine, a world-changing event. I saw chaos, nations trembling, people crying out in desperation. The air itself felt heavy with fear. Something had happened, something so massive that it shook the very foundation of society. I saw governments scrambling to respond. Leaders held emergency meetings, their faces tense with urgency. World economies collapsed overnight. People's bank accounts were frozen, businesses shut down, and a new message echoed across every screen. "A solution is coming," Jesus whispered. "This will be the final push." I saw how people, in their desperation, turned to the new system for survival. They didn't even question it. They were too afraid. I saw religious leaders appearing on television. They were respected, trusted. They spoke calmly, reassuringly. "This is not the mark of the beast," they said. "It's just a way to rebuild after the crisis. God would want us to be wise and take part." And so, churches divided. Some followed, blindly trusting the voices they had always listened to. Others saw the truth, but they were labeled extremists, troublemakers. Then I saw one man, a faithful believer, trying to warn his family. "Don't do this. Please. This is what Jesus warned us about." His own brother laughed. "You always were paranoid. If you don't want to eat, that's your choice." I watched him plead, cry, beg, but his family had already made their decision. The deception was complete. Jesus spoke again. "Only those who are deeply rooted in me will see the truth. Everyone else will follow the lie." Then the vision shifted. I saw light in the darkness. Scattered across the world, small groups of people were still standing firm. They had refused the system. They had lost everything, homes, jobs, even families. But they had not lost their faith. They gathered in secret, in homes, in forests, in abandoned places. They had no technology, no access to the world's new system, but they had something more powerful. I saw them praying with an intensity I had never seen before. Their worship was raw, pure, alive. Miracles happened among them. Food appeared where there was none. Sick bodies were healed instantly. They were invisible to the tracking systems. When they walked past security scanners, nothing detected them. Then I saw a woman with her children. They had gone days without food. She prayed over an empty bowl, and moments later it was filled with bread. Jesus said, "Just as I provided for my people in the wilderness, I will provide for them again." I saw angels walking among them. They looked like ordinary people until I saw them stop a group of soldiers in their tracks. The soldiers had come to arrest the believers, but the angels simply stood in their way, and the soldiers turned around as if they had forgotten their mission. God was protecting his people in ways the world couldn't understand. Jesus then said, "This is why you must not fear. The world may reject you, but I will never forsake you." I saw the believers growing stronger, even as the world fell apart. And then Jesus said one final thing, "Soon I will return, and those who endure will reign with me." Then everything faded to black. Jesus turned to me one last time, his eyes filled with urgency and sorrow. I could feel the weight of what was coming, not just in the world, but in the spiritual realm. "This is the final call," he said. "Many still sleep, thinking they have more time, but soon the door will close." At that moment, I saw a great door in the sky. It was massive, made of light, slowly closing. It wasn't slamming shut, but inching closer and closer, giving time but not much. I saw people running toward it, desperate to enter. Some were banging on it, pleading to be let in. Others stood just outside, debating whether to step forward. They hesitated. They had heard the warnings before, but ignored them. Some laughed, mocking those who ran inside. "Nothing is going to happen," they said, crossing their arms. "You're paranoid." But as they spoke, the door closed completely. The ones left outside turned to pure horror. They pounded their fists, screamed, cried, but the door was shut. Jesus whispered, "Just as in the days of Noah." I gasped. This was it. This was the final moment before everything changed. Jesus pointed at a clock floating in the air. It was counting down. There was barely any time left. I saw people going about their lives, oblivious to the ticking clock. They laughed, worked, scrolled through their devices, as if nothing was wrong. But suddenly, the clock stopped, and everything shifted. The world around me darkened. It was as if a veil had been lifted, revealing what was hidden beneath the surface. Demons walked freely. They were everywhere, influencing everything, the media, the leaders, even people in churches, but no one could see them, because they had already given in. They had traded their faith for comfort, their discernment for convenience, and then I heard it, a final trumpet blast. I saw two groups of people. The first were those who had prepared. They had resisted the system, they had remained faithful to Jesus. And as the world crumbled, they stood untouched. They had no fear, they had no panic, because they had already surrendered everything to Christ. The second group were those who had waited too long. They had assumed they would have one more chance. But now they realized it was too late. They screamed, begging for mercy, but the time of decision had passed. Jesus looked at me, his voice heavy. There will come a moment when the choice is permanent, when those who are mine will be sealed in my protection, and those who have chosen the world will no longer hear my voice.